The Rockets are planning something big after the 2025 season did not end the way they would hope to. H-Town plans to be very active in the 2025 offseason with assets to make necessary trades and acquire free agents that will be big splashes this year. Welcome in to Rockets Digest. I'm Jace Andrews, and I appreciate you joining us. Before we get going, hit the subscribe button for every big move that the Rockets are about to make. We're going to be your place for the news right away. And let's get right into this. How the next NBA superstar trade could go through the Houston Rockets. And I know I mentioned free agents, and that's going to be a big talk too, but trades are so big right now for so many different players. And for this purpose, I want to focus on them. So let's first talk about why Houston is so marketable, not just to trade acquisitions, but to the players that want to come here. And that's where we continue on in this article. And here's the big thing. Texas has no state taxes, which is really big when it comes to these giant contracts. Now, there are other states like Miami Heat, for instance. The Florida state does not have state taxes, but you also have an opportunity to win under head coach Ime Udoka, which, okay, you're comparing yourself to Miami in this instance. Eric Spoelstra's a great coach. The difference is you're on a team that is already on the verge of being a postseason powerhouse. The Rockets did not end the season the way they wanted to. That is fully understandable. However, the positives are there. Jalen Green knows he didn't play well. Alperen Şengün, Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, they were all playing in their first postseason. Fred VanVleet, whether he's back or not, he was the main veteran source, and he played great. Credit to him. I honestly kind of hope he's back. However, though, the young stars are going to get better. And you can make these moves without having to move either of those three guys, Şengün, Thompson, or Green, and, for instance, also Tari Eason, who really showed up later on in the season. And so let's go back to this. The Rockets, again, have enough to do a lot without moving Şengün, Thompson, Eason, or Green. But they can also retain key veterans like VanVleet, Brooks, Steven Adams. Now, there are some restrictions. We'll talk about that in just a second. But the flexibility is definitely there, where the last line of this is important. The Rockets do not need to decimate this roster to add a star. And that's just so big. And I think there's a lot of positives to this, but the point is the assets are there. The trade acquisitions are there. And for a lot of players, Houston is a very fun place to come play under a good head coach, a team that is on the verge of being one of the top teams in this entire basketball association. Like, they are going to be one of the top teams. And at the top of it all, you also aren't going to have income state taxes here in Texas. And that's where I want to continue with this article. And here's kind of what they're talking about with the money. I want to go through this real quick because I mentioned how the cap flexibility is definitely in there. Quote, suppose Houston is attempting to acquire a star earning the 2025-2026 projected maximum for players with at least 10 years of experience, which the estimate for that is about $54 million. In that case, it must send at least $43.1 million in outgoing salary that would trigger a first apron hard cap at the projected $195.9 million, end quote. That's from Eric Pincus from Bleacher Report. Now, what do all those numbers mean, Jace? What exactly does that entail? Well, the cap tax is a very big thing in the NBA. You're talking about a bunch of teams. I mean, the Celtics have been over it for a while, but they have already talked that this offseason they are going to break up their team so they do not have to have that giant $500,000 bill for the upcoming year in terms of paying that in the NBA cap tax. So the Rockets have some options here, and that's where we continue on. Saying, quote, to avoid that restriction, the Rockets can send at least $54.1 million, which would lock in a higher second apron hard cap and an expected $208.8 million. Now, that's more likely scenario as it allows Houston to keep as much of its core together as possible, though it requires another $11 million in outgoing salary, end quote. So, you need to send off $54 million. That's kind of the overarching theme there. And we have a lot of players earning some money. Jabari Smith Jr., $12 million. Reed Shepard, $10.6. Jock Landale, $8 million. Aaron Holiday, $4.9. Cam Whitmore, $3.5. Nate Williams, $2.3. Now, I don't know you want to send off all these players, but if you did take every single one of these guys and ship them away, then in that case scenario, that's about $40 million plus. close to $50 million. So you're right of that $54 million. That's where there is some questions with Fred VanVleet's contract. Do you opt out of this deal and have him sign to a more team-friendly deal? That way that money is technically going out. That's the question, though. There's going to have to be some team-friendly deals if you want to keep Fred VanVleet, if you want to keep these core relatively together. Now, there is players you can send off that weren't on the list. You could trade Dillon Brooks. You could trade Jalen Green. That would put off a bunch of money right there. Do you want to do that? I don't really think you do. That's not the way you're trying to win right now. You have a elite, I would call them the big three, but they're so young. I almost want to call them the little three of Şengün, Green, and Amen Thompson. And Tari Eason also played very great at the end of the season. So it's kind of interesting. But the money is going to be a challenge for sure. However, the picks are also that they can give up. And that's where the trade becomes a little easier. You can trade away, 2-3 of those players, reconstruct some contracts, and you also have a bunch of picks. Here are all the tradable picks they have. You have number 9 this year. It's obviously TBD on what exactly it's going to be. The 59th in June, 2028, 2030, 2032 first rounders, 2027, 2029, 2031 first round swap rights. They have the 2027 Phoenix Suns first rounder. In 2029, they have the Mavericks or Suns first rounder. And they also have a bunch of various future second round picks. There is a haul to be given by the Rockets to a team who wants to trade away a star, and the Rockets are willing to pay the price. The big question for Rafael Stone, the big question for the entire Rockets organization, what star do you go after? Do you believe that this team is a star away? And 3, how much are you willing to give up? That's where we all talk about the couple different players that have already been mentioned. Now, Devin Booker, I'm leaving out of this because in this situation, Jalen Green is staying with the team. And I think in the most case scenarios, if Jalen Green stays, you're probably not going to go after Devin Booker, but I could be wrong. Besides the point, our first player to look at is Kevin Durant, 26.6 points per game. He's almost 37 years old, though. However, you would take him for what would be his final chapter in his career, bring him back to his college state, played at UT, now comes back, play for Houston to finish out his career. He'd be a big veteran presence down low. You combine him with Şengün, and you have a middle of just absolute crazy scoring. Not to mention the double big lineup that worked so well this year can be executed even better if you have KD and Şengün out there, because both of which can play, the power forward position. You can put them at center position. It's kind of a rotating table there for the Rockets. I know Steven Adams also was a majority of the center time in the playoffs, and he was a really, really good factor when you look at it. So Kevin Durant's a really big name to look out for. I think that he is a top target for the Houston Rockets, but I think he is for the right price just because he is so old. And I know averaging that many points and being that old, it shouldn't really have that big of a deal. But at the same time, for long-term needs, for the future needs, for the Rockets, for what they want to do, not just this year, but the next coming years, it does make a little bit of sense to not give up, Jalen Green or Thompson or all their picks or all that stuff for KD. That has to be the right price. And so, some guy I think would be a little bit of a better price, Giannis Antetokounmpo. A little bit younger, definitely a star for sure. 30-plus points per game, averaged a double-double as he had nearly 12 rebounds per game. And he was the top leading scorer in the playoffs in the first round. He averaged 33 points a game and had 15 rebounds per game on a team that was really just him by the end of it. Obviously, Dame was great, but tearing his Achilles is going to be out for next year. The Bucks are about to blow up in a lot of ways, and it could start with trading Giannis Antetokounmpo. And there are reports that, he wants to play somewhere. Well, the Rockets are a big place that I think would be very, very marketable to Giannis in some ways, but I think the bigger thing to the Bucks organization, because we as a team have the most to give up, to give back for these trades. And that's the biggest thing. There's people, Giannis wants to go play in LA. He wants to go play in Miami. He wants to go play here. That's great. However, it's not him who is going to be chosen to trade. Yeah, he has to have a say in it. That is definitely a thing, especially for what he has meant to the Milwaukee Bucks. They owe him the right to at least allow him to seek a trade and be, somewhat in the process of where he wants to play. At the same time, though, the Bucks need a good deal, and a good deal would come from the Rockets. I think they could easily make the best deal for Giannis. It's, again, what does Rafael Stone want to give up? Does he believe Giannis is the solution here? Does he think that the Rockets are a player away? And that's where we throw in the crazy one. And be ready for this. A dream target for many franchises is Nikola Jokic, with the hope that the Denver Nuggets are unable to sustain a championship caliber play, and with recent firings, Mike Malone, their general manager Calvin Booth, perhaps, when we saw Jokic last night, he was the coach. I know they beat the Thunder, that's great, but he was literally the coach last night. He was screaming at the bench. Maybe he doesn't want to be the coach, and he turns down an extension and looks to move on. Now again, I know this is the crazy one. It's a fairy tale as he describes it in the article, but the Rockets should at least test the waters on it before rushing to a lesser deal like Trae Young, LaMelo Ball. Obviously, there's a bunch of fits that could easily do it, but the main focus is probably going to be Antetokounmpo, Durant, and in some cases, Devin Booker. And I want to sit here and you're probably questioning, we're not getting Jokic. What are you talking about, Jace? That's so dumb. Why would you even say that? If I would have told you 6 months ago that none other than Dallas Maverick star Luka Doncic was going to be a Los Angeles Laker, you would call me crazy, right? The NBA is a crazy league. And I'm not saying that Nico Harrison's GM is going to be the way that everybody GMs. That would be dumb. But I'm saying that crazier things have happened in the NBA and that Nikola Jokic, if he played for the Rockets, it would be game over. First of all, he's 30 years old, so a lot better than Kevin Durant. He's averaging 30 points per game. He's averaging a triple-double. That alone right there. He also was he was the 5th person ever last night to have 40 points, 20 rebounds, and 5 assists. 5th person ever. You add him to a Rockets team that was fighting against I'm going to say it, a Warriors team that would not have been a 7 seed had Jimmy Butler played the entire year with Golden State. This team becomes elite. And I know it's a fairy tale. It's the possibility is very unlikely. But you're saying there's a chance. Luka Doncic was not supposed to be a Laker at this current moment. Look where he is. Crazier trades have happened, and I just say never tell me the odds, man. Let's see what happens this offseason. The Rockets are gearing up to make a move. I can tell you that for sure. It's just a matter of who they decide they want to go after and what is going to happen. We will give you all the latest updates, so hit the subscribe button. Let me know any free agents that you would like to see or trade targets that you would want to have the Rockets get. But for now, I appreciate you watching, and we will see you next time here on Rockets Digest. Peace out.